الرحمن الرحيم ولقد نصركم सिर्फ है ना लेकिन जो पहली आयत थी इसको बताता हूँ बाद में फिर उसका लगा ठीक है أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولقد نصركم الله ببدر وأنتم أذلة فاتقوا الله لعلكم تشكرون إذ تقول للمؤمنين لن يكفيكم أن يمدكم ربكم بثلاثة آلاف من الملائكة منزلين بلى إن تصبروا وتتقوا ويأتوكم من فورهم هذا يمددكم ربكم بخمسة آلاف من الملائكة مسومين. And Allah had already helped you at Badr when you were weak. So take Allah for your protector, that you may be grateful. When thou didst say to the believers, will it not suffice you that your Lord should help you with 3,000 angels sent down from on high? Ye, if you be steadfast and righteous, and they come upon you immediately in hot haste, your Lord will help you with 5,000 angels attacking vehemently. I propose to return to the verse which we have already dealt with, that is وَإِذْ غَدَوْتَ مِنْ أَهْلِكَ تُبَوِّئُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ مَقَاعِدَ لِلْقِتَالِ, because some enemies of Islam, like I have quoted Very, Sale, and of the recent ones, and very vehement enemy of Islam, Mr. Montgomery Watt, who is still alive, there is certain criticism which needs to be answered, rebutted, and in the previous address I could not finish that treatment of the attack. So I'll return to that after I have finished the discussion of Uhud in the verses which I have just recited. وَلَقَدْ نَصَرَكُمُ اللَّهُ بِبَدْرٍ وَأَنْتُمْ أَذِلَّةٌ. As I told you yesterday, God is reminding the Muslims that as far as your weakness is concerned, that is no reason for you to fear, because God has already amply established the fact that your being weak as against a very powerful enemy is not material to the fact. What is material is Allah's help, which has been guaranteed you. So when you have already seen a wonderful demonstration of Allah's promise being kept against such odds as you faced in Badr, then why there should be any reason for you to fear and be concerned with your own weakness? This is the message delivered in this verse. وَلَقَدْ نَصَرَكُمُ اللَّهُ بِبَدْرٍ. God has already given you great victory on the day of Badr, while you were very weak and totally defenseless. Azillah means somebody who is incapable of defending himself. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. The real strength you can gain is from Allah's fear, not the fear of the enemy. So the word fattaqullah in juxtaposition to the subject discussed is so beautifully fitted. On the one hand are the fears of some weak Muslims against an overwhelmingly powerful enemy, which they might have entertained, how we're so weak, so strong, so small in size against a well-trained, overwhelming army of a much larger number. What can we do? These were the fears which must have been entertained by some of the Muslims. So they are addressed. They said, you know already that it was the fear of Allah which saved you from the fear of the enemy previously on the day of Badr. So return to the same recipe again. That is a well-tried recipe. Turn to the fear of Allah, and you have no other fear to overwhelm you or to cause you any damage. So, la'allakum tashkurun, then all that follows from taqwa is to be grateful. Now, in this expression, God has already promised a chain of victories, an unending chain of victories, because although it is not mentioned, but the word tashkurun explains this. What the Holy Quran has concluded is this: forget about your weakness. That's immaterial. What is important is taqwa, fear of Allah. So if you have fear of Allah, what will follow would be you being grateful to Allah. So one is not grateful to somebody for inflicting defeat on him or inflicting humiliation on him. This expression, you will be grateful, means that you will see to it, we will see to it, that you end up with such great victory and with a sense of achievement that all you are left to do is to be grateful to Allah and to be grateful to Allah and to express your gratitude in a way that you will not be able to fulfill the gratitude which you do owe to Allah. La'allakum tashkurun. Tashkurun is a state of constant expression of gratitude and unending, so that you continue to go on being grateful to Allah. Which means the mercy of Allah would be so big, so wonderful, that you will go on being grateful, but still you will not be satisfied, as if you had not done enough. So this is the picture which is painted in this verse. Al-Badr has been referred to repeatedly in the verse. But I should now turn to the true meaning of Al-Badr, because some of the people of younger generations, though they have heard of the word Al-Badr, they don't know the meaning. Al-Badr is the full moon. And it so happened that the Battle of Badr was fought on a day followed by full moon, or perhaps followed by a night with full moon, or maybe it was preceding, I'm not very sure. But that day was connected with a night anyway, either on either side, with a fully moonlit night. Hazrat Masih Maud has spoken on this subject of Badr in so many wonderful ways. He has mentioned that it was a sign from Allah that the Islam at that nascent stage, although it appeared like a hilal, the moon of the first night, which is sometimes so weak in its light that people fail even to spot it. And that first night moon, which is called a crescent or hilal, can be obscured by even a small shadow of a cloud, or by a dusty atmosphere or horizon. So that is what the enemies thought Islam was, and that is why they attempted to obliterate it from the scene of the world by obscuring the truth of Islam by after inflicting defeat on Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his followers. But God had so managed that the battle was fought on the day of Badr, which carried in itself a prophecy that this crescent is bound to grow into a full moon. Do whatever you may, you are bound to be frustrated. So that is a commentary of Hazrat Masih Maud, but he has spoken on the question of Badr in so many wonderful ways. I mean, he has written on this subject. I can't repeat all here, but I advise you to read Hazrat Masih Maud commentary on the word Badr and its relationship to what happened on the Battle of Badr. The word azilla, as I have already explained, is a position which is totally defenseless. This is what Tafsir Kabir Razi and Tafsir al-Khazin and Tafsir al-Kashaf and Tafsir al-Qasmi all believe it should be understood. This is how it should be understood. Az-zilla, not only indicates inadequate and small number or inadequate means to defend oneself, but it also means that obviously the position is so weak that it is totally defenseless. This commentary of Hazrat Masih Maud on Badr, among other books, is found in Khutbah Ilhamiyah, the version which we had available has it on pages 182 and 185. Now there are verses of the Holy Quran, mainly in Surah Anfal, which deal with the subject of Al-Badr. And if somebody is interested in understanding what happened on the day of Badr from the Quranic point of view, he should read Surah Anfal, verses 8 to 11, 12 to 15, 16 to 18, and 42, 43, and last 44, 45. Not last, there's still more to come. 48 and 49. In all these verses of Surah Anfal, the battle of Badr is treated. So if you read them you would get a fairly good, an excellent, not fairly good, but excellent account of all that happened on the day of Badr. استقول للمؤمنين ألن يكفيكم أن يمدكم ربكم بثلاثة آلاف من الملائكة منزلين. And remember that day, that time, or when you are addressing the believers by posing a question to them, would it not suffice you if Allah helped you with 3,000 angels, munzaleen, descending from the heaven? Now this verse has been generally misunderstood or misinterpreted by many earlier scholars because their concept of angel is very material. or was material. Not exactly in the sense as the concept of Devi Dyota in Hinduism, but something bordering upon that. They used to believe that angels are something with wings or have human form. Of course, there are other classical Muslim scholars who do not agree with that. But this was the general trend of the age. So previous commentators have treated the subject of descent of angels in the form of visible warriors with strong built and some mounted on steeds, black or white steeds, and well armed and well clad. So they have been reporting such visions, particularly in relation to Badr. And that is why some of the commentators have gone to believe that these verses which mention 3,000 angels or later on 5,000 angels, they pertain to the time, to the event of Badr, and they are not applicable to Surah, to the Battle of Uhud. Of course, a very strong party among the commentators, early commentators, including some Sahaba, firmly believe that these verses are applicable to Uhud and not to Badr. But the argument on the other side is that although angels were frequently seen on the day of Badr, helping the Muslim party, they were not seen on the day of Uhud, except for one tradition which speaks of some Sahaba, one of the companions, seeing two very strong and very powerful, awe-inspiring, white-clad warriors on either side of Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But he was the only one who saw this. Obviously, this is a vision, and such visions are commonly reported in religious experiences. That was he must have been worried, and God showed him that don't worry, we are to take care of our Prophet, you don't have to bother on this. So that must have been vision, but I believe that whatever has been reported about Badr was also a grand vision, because angels do not have such forms. They don't have to fight a weapon with fight a battle with material weapons. They are beyond that. They are ethereal. They are not physical and material as we understand things. So that must have been, they could have been either apparitions, which are rather airy in concept, or a grand scale vision to prove to the Sahaba, to the companions, that what has been foretold by Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is to be taken seriously and is to be believed in. Such large-scale visions are also reported in Islamic history, like the vision of Hazrat Umar Radiyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, in which he was shown the Muslim army fighting in the north, quite some 100 miles from Medina, where some 100 miles or a long distance at least, he saw that the army was being led to a position where it became much more vulnerable from a more powerful enemy. So the best position should have been to retreat to the side of the mountain, like the position of Muslim army at the time of Uhud. So while he was delivering sermon, he saw this vision, and forgetting about his sermon, he just shouted, "Ya Sariyat al-Jabal, Ya Sariyat al-Jabal." Sariya was the name of the general, a Muslim general, whom he was giving this instruction, O Saria, take to the side of the mountain, take to the side of the mountain. And this voice was heard by the whole army at that long distance. So exactly this is what they did immediately, and an impending defeat was turned into a glorious victory. So as it happened at the time of Hazrat Umar, why could it not have happened at the time of the Holy Prophet himself, who was the source of all blessings of such visions? So that is why I want you to understand these things in the form of some spiritual experiences and visions, and not in the form of angels taking a real material form and body to come and help, because they help in different ways. So if they were not seen at the time of Uhud, it does not mean that they were non-existent, they were not non-present there. It further indicates that the presence of the angels is spiritual and is not physical as some people expect. So in the light of this, there are two phases of the battle which have been referred to by these two verses. The first phase is the first period of the Muslim contact with the enemy, when they almost routed the enemy and the enemy was in full rapid hasty retreat. It says that God is powerful, God has all the power to help you with 3,000 angels which would descend on this occasion. Although the tense appears to be future, but these verses perhaps were revealed after the battle of Uhud. So it was, the tense is Muzariya, no, future tense, which also, let me say, right, no, I'm sorry. This was a prophecy made by Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He must have been told by God before the battle of Badr that this is what is going to happen. Because although the verses seem to be revealed after the event of Uhud, not Badr, these verses refer to what Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was telling the Muslim army at the time of when he was giving them instructions and showing them the places they should occupy before the battle. So that shows that Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had already told them before the beginning of the battle that angels would descend to help you, and 3,000 angels would descend to help you. Now, why 3,000? The number of enemy was 3,000. So it means that some spiritual forces were allocated the task of attending each of the invading a soldier to tackle him, I believe, psychologically, and to play havoc with his views of the time and understanding of what was happening. But the second verse goes on to build the subject by referring to a larger number. Bala in tasbiru wa tattaqu wa yatukum min fawrihim haza yumdidkum rabbukum bi khamsati alafin min al malaikati musawwimin, which means that yes, why not? Why shouldn't help from the succor from Allah be sufficient for you if you show patience and exercise fear of Allah, وَيَعْتُكُمْ مِنْ فَوْرِهِمْ, and even if they surprise you by a sudden unexpected onslaught, يُمْدِدْكُمْ رَبُّكُمْ بِخَمْسَةِ آلَافٍ مِنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ, God will help you with 5,000 instead of 3,000 angels. Musawwimeen means those who have been marked for this occasion. So this is 100% certain that Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had included this message in his instructions delivered before the battle had started. Because all the Muslim and non-Muslim scholars alike are agreed on this, that whenever the Holy Quran speaks of an event of the time of Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it has to be taken literally, to be literally correct in every detail. Because even the most vehement enemies of Islam from among the Westerners have accepted this principle, that if the Quran refers to a matter of the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if the Quran misreports it, then all the followers of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would know that it is false, it is a lie, it is a misreport. So they would turn back to their original older faiths and abandon Islam. So they say it was impossible. They believe that the Holy Quran was concocted by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yet they have to give credit to this, to the Holy Quran's version of the time, the events of the time. So in view of this principle, one has to admit that when the Holy Quran even later on refers to this instruction, which was given to the Muslim army by Ahmad prior to the battle of Uhud, it must have been exactly what he said. So it is a prophecy. And I believe it was fulfilled verbatim twice, exactly as it has been reported. This prophecy also contains the prophecy of temporary defeat of the Muslims. This prophecy also refers to the temporary overwhelming sorrow of the Muslims at the news of Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's reported death. Because if you read it again in the light of what I have explained, then everything will fall into pieces in their correct places. Istaqulu lil mu'minina allan yakfiyakum an yumiddakum rabbukum bi thalathati alafin min malaikati munzilin. This doesn't show any period of peril or fear or danger. It is straightforward statement of Muslim victory with the help of angels. And it happened. The second verse says, Bala in tasbiru wa tattaqu. After this victory, there was bound to happen something which would require patience and quiet suffering. And that patience was very much needed by every Muslim when they heard the news of Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's falling victim of the war, having fallen victim of the war. As I will explain later on, the events which followed, it shows that the Muslims exercised that period of gravest crisis in their history with unbelievable patience. Yet the sorrow they suffered was something beyond one's imagination today. I'll quote some of the instances which are related to this event. Then you will understand. You'll begin to understand what must have happened on the day of Uhud, in the second phase of its unveiling its events. So it says, in bala in tasbiru wa tattaqu, and you will show fear of Allah at the same time, not fear of the enemy, which might have returned, which might have caused you such damage. It's not only patience you need, then you must have fear of Allah foremost in your mind, even if you're surprised. Min fawrikum haza means that there was a prophecy that the Muslim army after the first victory were going to be unpleasantly surprised. causing grave damage to the Muslims, still God will increase His help. At the time of crisis, at the time of confusion, more help is needed, not less. So that is why the number is increased from 3,000 to 5,000. But then later on God explains further. I'll turn to a verse which falls later, which says that we have promised you all this about the angels, etc. But remember that it is not the angels themselves which are important. All help comes from Allah, and it is that what matters. So this expression elaborates the situation by pointing out that don't overemphasize the concept of angels and their physical presence, etc. What is required is help from God. What matters is help from God, and He has so many ways of helping you. So the terminology of angels is only used to satisfy your hearts. What is important, what is essential is help from Allah, which you did receive and which we had promised and provided you at the time of crisis. Now, some scholars still persist in claiming that if not the previous verses, this verse, these two verses apply to the Battle of Badr, as I've already mentioned, because of this notion that angels were seen there and there no angels were seen at the time of Uhud. Allama Alauddin Baghdadi also is of this view. Hazrat Muslim Maud, of course, believes these verses to be applicable to Uhud. He says, min forihim means without giving you let or respite, immediately, without waiting. So he says that if they surprise you, then he says the meaning is if they surprise you, then the angels will be more in number. If it's an ordinary battle, in ordinary situation, then you will require less help. This is exactly what I have already explained to you. But these two events, so far I have not come across in any commentary as having been separately treated in these two verses. So after I have explained, it becomes very clear that in fact these two verses are prophecies of what was to come on the day of Uhud, and they were fulfilled exactly as they had been foretold. Foreign, according to Tajul Urus, means to spurt forth with force and power. So that is why in Urdu also we call Fawwara. Any spring or fountain is referred to as Fawwara because it spurts forth with such power. So when for him Haza does not only mean that it is the suddenness which will be against you, but also with the fervor and the strength and the force would be very powerful, very overwhelming, and it may scare you. Similarly, according to Bahrul Muhit, the word for has the connotation of being easily annoyed. Someone being easily annoyed and infuriated. So for him would have that connotation as well. They must have been extremely annoyed at the first defeat, and so they came back with a vengeance, suddenness and vengeance. About the hell, the Holy Quran has used the same expression, وَهَيَ تَفُورُ, in Surah 67, verse 7, which means it will be boiling with rage, the hellfire would be. Mufradat-e-Raghib declares that the word, the expression musawwimin, as I've already pointed out, means marked, stamped like horses and cattle, etc., marked for special, to indicate belonging to special farms or some other, for some other reasons. So those angels were specifically marked for that period. Now, what does that mean? This is rather perplexing. Generally, I have not found this discussion in other commentaries. Angels are spiritual beings. They could not have been marked like this. And what did they do afterwards? After that the purpose was served. So I believe it is a much profounder phenomenon which is referred to. You know, we have a system, an antibody system in our natural defense is provided to us, where millions of types of antibodies can be created for specific purposes. Unless they are created for that specific purpose, they are useless and meaningless. For instance, if somebody has a common cold, even that common cold which is described by this common word common cold is not of the same type every time. That is why the medical profession has so far failed to invent a single medicine for common cold. Every time the virus comes in different shapes and sizes and attitudes and powers. So how ultimately the common cold is defeated? Because every time when the body is given the message that you are being threatened to death by an invading host of a certain type of viruses, immediately the body sends feelers to measure the type of virus and to ascertain, pinpoint exactly the character of the virus, so that they know this is the type of virus, this is the type of toxin which will be released, this is the shape of the virus, and the type of antibody which is needed to overwhelm this type of virus would be of that dimension and that quality and character. Now, you will be surprised. But this is not just a tale, a fantasy. It is exactly how it happens. So in the body, when a special force of bodies, antibodies, which is trained in this art of reaching out first, the approaching enemy, and sending the message, they don't fight it. They just work as spies, forward spies, first band of spies. They measure it so correctly and so perfectly that they send the message to the arms factory in the body, where not only arms are manufactured, but soldiers are also manufactured. Normally, the body does not have the soldiers, abundant number of soldiers to meet with any situation. But each situation, the type of soldiers needed are created separately. And weapon system is also manufactured separately for each occasion. Even when you are pinpricked, even at the slightest disturbance caused to the body, the same phenomenon takes place. Then the forward messengers would appear and judge measure the damage done to you and send the message that this type of treatment is needed at that spot, at the fingertip of somebody, of that person, and the damage is of that quality and that dimension, so reaction should not be overmuch. If there is a failure of communication, or if there is a panic caused by the nervous reaction of man, then the reaction precedes the preparation. And that is why you have some swollen fingers and bulging out knobs on the head, etc., where you are hit by something. But all this is done with exquisite detail to the event of the time. So musawwimin, I understand, refers to such a situation. Angels are needed to control this phenomenon. Hazrat Muslim Maud has at length dealt with the concept of angels, and it was for the first time I came across this most wonderful this new concept, the new attitude towards angels. I later on I found that it was, of course, his description of angels was based on writings of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam, but he elaborated them beautifully. So he told us in the book Malaikatullah that angels are specifically appointed for running all the huge the phenomena of universe, all the huge what I should call karkhana, industry, or whatever you may call it. The entire universe is being governed by an untold number of angels which you simply cannot cost. That is why the Holy Quran says, as far as the host of Allah's angels is concerned, they are innumerable. Nobody can count them. So all laws of nature are governed by angels. That was a declaration made by Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salam. Hazrat Muslim Maud elaborated it further and said that for each smaller part of the application of a law of nature, angels are required to direct. So all that you see in the universe is not happening by itself. The scientists simply refer to these things as laws of nature. But laws have to be enforced. You can't just make laws for them to get enforced themselves. Wherever there is a law, there has to be a law enforcing agency. So laws appear to be dead expressions of how things react in the universe and counter-react. But according to the Islamic philosophy, based on the Quranic declarations, these laws have those who operate those laws behind them, and they are angels. So it is not just a myth that is being discussed here. The word musawwimin led me to believe that there were certain angels within their own psyches which control so many glands, their secretions, and things which can cause hallucinations, fears, hopes, depressions. All these things in thousands and thousands of forms continue to take place in our bodies. For each, like the production of antibody, a special type of angel is needed who would be created for that particular purpose. So during the first phase of war, different types of angels were required in different numbers. So God referred to that phase as helping you with 3,000 angels. Later on, a different situation arose out of the sudden turning of the tables against the Muslims and big confusion and sudden and unexpected attack from all sides. For that specific angels were created for specific purpose. Their number was 5,000. So Musawwamin here means they were made to measure, made to fulfill a requirement. So I don't say that the angels come and go and die. I don't mean that. But the phenomenon they create is a transient phenomenon. They meet a situation, they treat it as ordered by Allah, and then that phase is over. So their musawwimin here means they were created and well equipped to deal with that particular situation. So that is why, despite the fact that apparently the enemy had every possibility, every opportunity to destroy and annihilate the Muslim forces, they seem to have retreated, they seem to have hurried back. And when I'll quote portions of what Mr. Watt and some others have written, you will also feel their uneasiness, their lack of understanding. They are itching. Why did they not come forward, enter the cave where he was sitting, so helpless and injured and in such sorry state? Why did they not finish them off? They had every opportunity. But suddenly what we see, they decide to retreat, run away, leave the whole place, go back to more than 200 miles from there. They had started this journey and it had taken so long for preparation. So these things can't be explained by their venom, just by saying that Muhammad invented this and Muhammad did that. They are just mad ravings on their part. The facts remain inexplicable, and they can be only explained with reference to these two verses. This was a prophecy made by the Quran, by the Holy Prophet of Islam, recorded in the Quran later on, but mentioned as a prophecy prior to the war, which got fulfilled exactly as it had been predicted. So it was a miraculous intervention by Allah which saved the day ultimately for the Muslims. Otherwise, it was impossible. So now is the time approaching for prayer. No, I'm sorry. Good. So we'll be able to finish this part. I was surprised why so quickly it has passed. Yes, like when for him haza, This is verse. Which verse did we treat? 126. And now is the 126. Now is the turn for 127. وَمَا جَعَلَّهُ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بُشْرَى لَكُمْ. That is the verse which I referred to earlier. Which means that when we spoke of angels, we only meant to give you a glad tidings. That was all. Of something which would happen. Don't take it too literally. That is the sort of explanation put forward by the Holy Quran itself. Bushra lakum wa litatma'inna qulubukum. So that your hearts are put at rest. وَمَن نَصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَكِيمِ. The important thing for you to remember is that all help comes from Allah alone, and He knows how to help you because He is Al-Azizul Hakim. Al-Aziz is a powerful person who ends up victorious. If you just describe somebody as powerful, it doesn't mean that in the end he will end up victorious. But Aziz is an expression of somebody's prowess and strength with relationship to the outcome of the combat. If a person always emerges victorious, then his being powerful would be referred to as Aziz, not otherwise. So it says that God is Aziz. He does not stand in need of angels or other things or materials or agencies. So remember, the all important thing is that God is with you and God should be with you. As long as you are with God, as long as you are God-fearing, you have nobody else to fear. So angels and these things, they are just expressions. They are just jargons of a sort and should not be taken too literally and too seriously. Allah knows best what happens and what the nature of angels be. Now let me turn to Tafsir Razi, what Imam Razi has to say about it. Imam Razi simply says that there are two reasons mentioned with reference to this prophecy. Number one, to please your hearts, and number two, to assure you of victory so that you do not show cowardice. So that's obvious, of course. Now, Tafsir Razi, I have very deep, profound respect for Imam Razi. He reaches to such depths as generally many other commentators fail to reach. He mentions the fact which I have already explained to you. Imam Razi says that immediately after the mention of the angels, this verse indicates that do not overemphasize the presence of angels. Do not have, do not be misled to believe that it is the angels which are important things for you. Allah says what is important is God's help. In whatever form it comes, it is immaterial comparatively. So this is exactly the import of this message, this verse. Imam Razi has also mentioned that although Aziz, there are two attributes of Allah mentioned, Al-Aziz, Al-Hakim. He said Al-Aziz, of course, refers to his overwhelming power in every situation. Al-Hakim means that whatever he decides, there is an underlying wisdom in that. So even in apparent defeat, you must not think that Allah at that time was not Aziz, as if temporarily he had become weakened. He is not only Aziz, but he is also Hakim. He has a profound plan of things, deeper reasons for things to take place, which ultimately can turn out to be of good as people who are friendly or close to Allah. So, according to Imam Razi, perhaps that is why he mentions it, that because in the Battle of Uhud there was a temporary phase when Allah, at least from some vantage point, did not appear to be Aziz. The Holy Quran reminds us that he is not Aziz, only Aziz, but also Hakim. So there is wisdom in whatever he does. And when you study the effects of Battle of Uhud, of course there was so much wisdom in it. You know, the event of Banu Nazir's exodus, turning them out of Medina, was closely related to the events of Uhud, because they miscalculated the weakness of Muslims. Previously, they had been hiding their venom very, if not effectively, but to some degree. And they were cautious in dealing with the Muslims and showing their animosity openly. But it was the Battle of Uhud which completely, deceived them as to the real strength of Muslims. They said, if these are the people, after all, and this is what Mr. Watt has also mentioned, that immediately after Jang-e-Uhud, that's the Battle of Uhud, the Jews started openly taunting Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his followers. They said, is this the type of prophet you are? Now we understand. Our prophets never suffered defeat. A humiliation in a battle like this, it's impossible. So you are not a prophet, you are an ordinary person. This emboldened them. Now this also shows that previously, as contrary to what Mr. Watt would have us believe, they were not afraid of Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They were afraid of Allah's help being on his side. So, Battle of Uhud made them draw a wrong conclusion. They knew Prophet Muhammad and his prowess very well, and the number of Muslims which he commanded, of course. That was immaterial to them. They thought they were powerful enough to deal with such a force. But they were afraid of God's help. That is why the Holy Quran in other places has referred to this, that they, although they reject the Prophet, within their hearts they believe that God is with him. So, Jang-e-Uhud, that is the Battle of Uhud, became instrumental in exposing this contradiction within them. According to Mr. Watt, after the Battle of Uhud, they started openly criticizing and ridiculing Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Muslims by specifically pointing out that we are no longer under the impression that God is with you and you are a prophet. Even previously they had rejected him. Why do they say no longer? They say now the Battle of Uhud has established beyond a shadow of doubt that you are an ordinary man and you do not have any help from God. So this admission on the part of the Jews also points out to the previous thinking and the previous attitude. So although Watt has in his own style attempted to ridicule Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself with the help of the Jews, he helped me understand a phenomenon which was claimed by the Holy Quran, but of which we had no proof previously. You see, whenever the Holy Quran says that the Jews, although they reject as people of the book, deep inside they believe in the truth of the Holy Prophet. At least they suspect. If somebody had asked us, what is the proof? We could not offer any proof. Now this observation of what had helped me understand now that this is the proof of their previous belief about Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So once this fear of God was broken and shattered, as far as the Jews were concerned, they thought God was not at his side, or what happened at Uhud could not have happened. They got emboldened. And they started openly opposing Islam and hurting the Muslims by showing much greater defiance than ever before. That provided the justification to Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam for attacking them, because they then had already openly and clearly had violated the Misaq Medina, or the Pact of Medina, and were vulnerable to attack justifiably. So that ended up in their expulsion from Medina. So that was one of the victories of the Battle of Uhud. So when the Holy Quran says Wallahu Azizun Hakim, it means that you are hasty in your expectations. You think God must show His power every moment without planning ahead. But even in apparent transient defeats, God has deeper wisdom, which is revealed later on by the events to follow. So it has left two fruits with us, this event. The Jews are exposed. They have to confess that prior to the Battle of Uhud, their denial of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not justified, because within their hearts they did suspect that he was a man of God. That is one fruit of Uhud, that we have got that proof. And the second is their animosity was surfaced, and they openly started defying Rasulullah, with the result of their own annihilation in the end. لِيَقْطَعَ طَرَفًا مِنَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَوْ يَكْبِتَهُمْ فَيَنْقَلِبُوا خَائِبِينَ. It says, لِيَقْطَعَ طَرَفًا مِنَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. This, what happened at the Battle of Uhud, was to achieve two purposes. First of all, to uproot or to annihilate a part of the enemy, of those who do not believe. And secondly, yakbetahum fayanqalibu. How is the word yakbeta translated in English? Nikbat is disgrace and a lowly state. But let me refer to the English one rendering. I'll read. وَيَقْطَعَ طَرَفًا. This will be that he might cut off a part of the disbelievers, or abase them. Abase is the right word. Abase them so that they might go back frustrated. So the wisdom employed by God refers to these two objectives to be gained from the Battle of Uhud. Number one, a part of the enemy will be destroyed, and second, they will return without achieving their objective. So of course both these objectives were achieved by the Battle of Uhud, and they did return without achieving the objective, which according to the Orientalists was solely to kill Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and thereby they thought to finish Islam at its source. Let me see what other commentators have to say on this. Taraf, liyaqta tarafan. According to Aqrab, taraf means harfu shay wa nahiyatuhu, the border, the periphery. So Allah says that the Battle of Uhud was meant not to destroy the enemy entirely, but only to inflict peripheral injury, peripheral destruction at the borders, not at the heart of the enemy. You see, this is exactly opposite of what was meant at the Battle of Badr and what was achieved. About the Battle of the Badr, the Holy Quran says that this battle was fought so that the very roots of the enemy are uprooted, the foundations of the enemy are uprooted, and they are destroyed at the sources. Now, this is a very interesting comparison because that objective was completely fulfilled by the Muslims. And as I will quote Montgomery Watt next time. He admits, he names them one after the other, says, these were all the important people of Quraysh. They were completely destroyed and annihilated. There was no leadership left behind. So that was the purpose of the first war, which was completely fulfilled to the advantage of the Muslims, for the sake of the Muslims. The purpose of Uhud was from the side of the Mushrikeen of Mecca, to uproot Islam at the sources and to destroy its leadership. In that purpose they failed. You see, this was, according to them, it was a tit for tat for Badr, but a tit for tat which did not happen in fact. If Islamic leadership had been destroyed, particularly if Muhammad had been killed, God forbid, then of course they would have succeeded. So the Holy Quran says the purpose of the battle was not to uproot the enemy, because the enemy had already been uprooted at Badr. We have demonstrated to you that was the purpose, and we did achieve that purpose. This time it was the enemy on the attack to take its revenge, so it returned with peripheral injuries, of course, but having been defeated in its purpose. That is the word that is the connotation of the word nikbah. No, not nikbah. What was it? Yakbetahum. So they would be abased, they would be brought low, because they would fail to achieve the prime objective of this invasion, and will return without anything in their hands. Empty-handed, so to say. In Tafsir Fathul Qadir, Shawkani, Imam Shawkani has connected these two things. I've just read this. I'm surprised to find that Imam Shawkani also drew the same conclusion, that here in this verse the comparison is with the objectives of Badr, where Muslims succeeded and they failed. Here they failed in achieving their objectives. The rest is already discussed. لَيْسَ لَكَ مِنَ الْأَمْرِ شَيْءٌ أَوْ يَتُوبَ عَلَيْهِمْ أَوْ يُعَذِّبَهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ ظَالِمُونَ. You're neither here nor there in this matter. God is to decide. So it's not what you would like to have happened. It is for God to either forgive them or to punish them, because transgressors they are anyway. Who are referred to in this verse? This is the first point which must be addressed. Different explanations have been forwarded. Those who consider this verse applicable to the events of Uhud include Imam Razi, Imam Shawkani, Allama Zamakhshari, Allama Qurtubi, etc. But only Allama Alauddin, the author of Tafsir al-Khazin, has taken it to apply to a different incident, that is the incident of Bir Mauna, where 70 Huffaz al-Quran, 70 companions of the Holy Prophet who had memorized the Holy Quran, were treacherously slaughtered, except for one who escaped somehow, but all the rest, one or two, I think one escaped during the battle, during the time when they were surrounded, and one other, because of some tribal associations, was spared. But anyway, one or two were spared. All the rest of the companions were murdered cold-bloodedly. So Imam Alauddin would have this verse applicable, this verse refer to that event. As Imam Razi has also mentioned about Muqatil having expressed the same view, but he has expressed his own disagreement. He says, no, certainly not. This verse is applicable to the events of Uhud and not to any other event. But Imam Razi also maintains that this verse discusses a matter of principle applicable to the sanctity and chastity of all prophets. You see, this is a very interesting conclusion he has drawn. He says, why suddenly God says, addressing to Prophet ﷺ, that the matter of how these people are disposed does not lie with you. The question does not lie with you. It's not in your power. We will decide what we have to do. Imam Razi says the merciless murder of Hazrat Hamza, who was very dear uncle of Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and mutilation of his body, and later on chewing of a portion of his liver in expression of extreme, vengeance and wrath by Hinda. These had infuriated Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, or at least so profoundly saddened him that he might have thought of reacting to this and inflicting some similar injuries upon the enemy. So Imam Razi says perhaps this refers to that. But Allah says, we will take the matter in our own hand, then it is for God either to forgive them or to punish them. Now, if you understand this to mean what Imam Razi would have us believe, then it would infer that perhaps God has shown through reflection his displeasure of Ahmad's reaction in a very delicate manner, that we can also forgive, but perhaps you will not. I don't take this to be that at all, because Ahmad was all forgiving. And another event later on proves that this conclusion is not correct, this inference is not right. Because if Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had understood it to mean that you must not take your revenge or show your displeasure at the culprits who had expressed such such merciless, I mean, not expressed merciless, but I say, who had behaved so mercilessly and beastly towards your dear uncle. If God had understood this to mean that, then you have nothing to do with it. We will take the matters in our own hand. How could he then, in the end, when Mecca was conquered, decided not to forgive Hinda? Hind or Hinda? Hind. Yes. Not to forgive Hind, who was instrumental in all this cruelty perpetrated against Hazrat Hamza. So, if this verse applied to that situation, Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam must have understood it much better than Imam Razi or anybody else. Then it was impossible for him to decide that Hind would not be spared, she would be killed, as her war crimes during the Battle of Uhud. Also, what follows gives a lie to this conclusion again. When Hind, disguised as a Muslim, a lady who had joined the party which was getting initiated at the hand of Muhammad, during that period spoke up, could not suppress herself because she was a very lady of some very pronounced characters. Muhammad recognized her voice. Despite his decision that he would revenge the mutilation of Hazrat Hamza from Hind, at that moment he accepted his plea for forgiveness and forgave her. So this verse does not mean that you will not forgive and we will forgive, as if Muhammad had reached the limit of his mercy and beyond that he was incapable of forgiving his enemies. So this is not a right conclusion. Imam Razi is a great commentator, no doubt, but here he seems to have failed. Hazrat Anas mentions that it was not about Hazrat Hamza, but it was about the injury to the teeth of Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You know, some teeth were lost in that by the striking stone. You know, they were smashed out. So it's Hazrat Anas says that this verse should perhaps apply to that event, because when Muhammad was stuck with that stone which caused in the breaking of his teeth, he said, "Kaifa yuflihu qawmun fa'alu haza bi nabiyyihim wa huwa yad'uhum ila Allah." Tirmizi, Kitab al-Tafsir. How could Allah redeem or cause a people to be redeemed who treat their Prophet like they have treated me? He was showing his wonder. They have crossed all limitations, and by hurting me so, they have in fact what's the word? You know, the word is missing me, but what I mean to say is, this indicates that by acting in the manner they have acted, they have ceased to deserve Allah's forgiveness. This is the meaning of this expression as quoted by Hazrat Anas. So, if that was the thought of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, then the verse which we are discussing would mean that leave that to Allah. Allah knows best how to revenge the injury caused to you. But I do not agree with that either, because this expression of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is a general expression of regret at what they do, of his helplessness to stop them from inviting Allah's wrath. It is not an expression of his helplessness, of expression of his satisfaction that now they have earned the wrath of Allah and Allah will destroy them. It's not that expression at all. It's an expression of mercy. He's even more worried for them. He said, I want to save them. I want to call them to the path of Allah, but by continuous persistence in their committing atrocities against me and my followers, they are losing the chances of gaining Allah's mercy. So it is not an expression of revenge of any sort. It's an expression which is at one with another verse of the Holy Quran where God addressing Muhammad says, لَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ نَفْسَكَ أَلَّا يَكُونُوا مُؤْمِنِينَ. This in fact is a demonstration of the same expression. In that verse, Allah says, O Prophet of God, will you destroy yourself, annihilate yourself for grieving at the non-believers whom we will punish? So he grieved for his enemies' punishment, at the thought of his enemies being punished, and grieved so much that God reminded him that if you go on grieving for the possible punishment which your enemies would meet at my hand, you will come to, you will destroy yourself. You will die out of this grief. This is the meaning of لَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ نَفْسَكَ. So this verse, this expression of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam must be understood in conjunction with this verse of the Holy Quran. So whatever was passing in the heart and mind of Muhammad Sallallahu at the time of that injury and at the time of the loss of dear ones and the mutilation of Hamza was not the thoughts of entertaining revenge or scheming against the enemies or somehow punishing the culprits. The thoughts have been expressed in this one single sentence which he uttered repeatedly. كَيْفَ يُفْلِحُ قَوْمٌ فَعَلُوا هَذَا بِنَبِيِّهِمْ. He says, how will they ultimately be guided to the right path? Yuflihu here means they will succeed in reaching the truth. They will be guided to the right path when they have crossed all limits. So it was for their concern that he was worried, not concerned for what injury had been caused to him or others, but the result of that injury he was afraid, would lead them further astray, and they will be deprived of ultimately being delivered from the sin. So that is for today. Next time, inshallah, I'll discuss further commentaries on these verses by some Orientalists, and then we'll turn to the next subject discussed in the verse following. Isko arrange it in a way that The verses we have finished already should be followed not by the next verse in order, but by the same verse which I referred to earlier, so that I can return to the treatment of Battle of Uhud by the hostile Orientalists. Then after that we will turn to the next verse and pick up the thread from there, right? I hope I have been able to to express myself clearly. The difficulty I face is there are so many youth here, there are so many young people who are not, who have not read even the rudiments of Islamic history, and some don't understand even the Holy Quran. I doubt if there are many among you who can read with translation the Holy Quran. Perhaps they recite, but there are few, very few, who read carefully along with the recitation, the translations, and try to understand. So when I comment on these verses and go to some depth, I always feel, lack of confidence about whether I have been able to make myself clear or not, whether they are with me or they have dozed off without knowing what I'm saying. So that is why I take longer than normally I should. Apparently, sometimes I have said what I have said, but I keep coming back to it because on some faces I see still some confusion, some lack of understanding. So I try to take these people along with me instead of leaving them behind. So those who have sharper wits and greater knowledge, they should bear with me and they should understand my difficulty, and they should not get bored at these repetitions, please. Assalamu alaikum.
أعوذ بالله